The woman sitting on the cold sidewalk outside the small roadside cafe looked like someone the world had already forgotten. Her hoodie was stained with dust, her hands trembled from hunger, and her eyes searched every passing face for a single sign of kindness. Hundreds of expensive cars rolled by without slowing down. Well-dressed strangers looked away as though compassion had become too expensive to give. But then, a tired single father carrying a paper bag with his little daughter stopped walking. He looked at the food in his hands, looked at the hungry stranger, and made a decision that would change all three of their lives forever. Neither of them knew that the woman they believed to be homeless was actually one of the richest billionaires in the country, spending one day living as the invisible people she had spent years trying to help from behind the walls of luxury. Before we begin this unforgettable story, take 1 second to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who still believes kindness can change lives, and subscribe to Humanity Tales if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world humanity still exists. Victoria Langston had built one of the largest technology companies in America. Newspapers called her a visionary. Business magazines celebrated her as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the nation. Investors admired her intelligence, and employees respected her leadership. Yet despite all the success, Victoria felt increasingly disconnected from the people her company claimed to serve. Every report she received was filled with numbers, statistics, and polished presentations about poverty, homelessness, and community outreach. Everything looked perfect on paper, but something deep inside her whispered that the truth was hidden behind those neat charts. She remembered something her late grandmother had once told her when she was still a child. Real generosity, she had said, could never be measured by the size of a donation. It could only be measured by what someone was willing to sacrifice. Those words stayed with Victoria for years until one morning she quietly decided to disappear. Without informing the media, her executives, or even her closest assistants, she dressed in worn-out clothes, removed every piece of jewelry she owned, left behind her expensive phone, and carried only a few dollars hidden in her pocket for emergencies. She wanted no special treatment, no security guards, and no recognition. She wanted to know what it truly felt like to depend entirely on the kindness of strangers. The experience became heartbreaking almost immediately. People who smiled warmly at wealthy customers ignored her existence completely. Restaurant workers politely asked her to leave before she had even spoken. Office employees avoided eye contact. Parents pulled their children a little closer whenever she walked by. It wasn't anger she saw in people's eyes. It was something far worse. It was indifference. Hour after hour passed under the blazing afternoon sun. Hunger slowly replaced curiosity. Her feet hurt from walking, and exhaustion settled into every muscle. For the first time in decades, Victoria understood what it meant to have nowhere to go. As evening approached, she found herself sitting outside the Rosebud Cafe, trying to gather enough strength to continue. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the air, making her empty stomach ache even more. That was when she noticed a man walking toward the cafe, holding the hand of a little girl no older than 6. The man looked exhausted. His work boots were covered in dust, and his faded shirt carried the stains of a long day doing construction work. His daughter clutched an old teddy bear whose stitching had been repaired countless times with different colored thread. Victoria watched as the man counted the few bills in his wallet before ordering 2 simple sandwiches. She could see the careful calculations in his face. Every dollar mattered. His name was Daniel Harper. 2 years earlier, Daniel had lost his wife to cancer. Since then, every day had become a balancing act between working long hours, raising his daughter Lily, paying rent, and trying to keep hope alive. Most evenings they shared simple meals, not because they wanted to, but because that was all he could afford. When Daniel stepped outside carrying the small paper bag, Lily noticed Victoria sitting against the wall. Children often see what adults ignore. Lily tugged gently on her father's sleeve. Daniel followed her gaze. He paused. Victoria lowered her eyes, expecting him to keep walking like everyone else. Instead, Daniel slowly sat down a few feet away. He opened the paper bag. There were only 2 sandwiches. He looked at his daughter. She smiled softly before he even asked. Without hesitation, Daniel broke one sandwich in half and handed the larger portion to Victoria. It wasn't leftovers. It wasn't extra food. It was half of everything he and his daughter had. Victoria tried to refuse, but the hunger in her body betrayed her. She accepted the sandwich with shaking hands. As she took the first bite, tears quietly filled her eyes. Not because of the food, but because for the first time all day, someone had looked at her as though she still mattered. Daniel never asked who she was. He never demanded an explanation. He never expected anything in return. He simply believed that no human being should go hungry while another person had food to share. As they quietly ate together, Lily reached into her tiny backpack and pulled out a juice box she had been saving for later. Without saying a word, she gently placed it beside Victoria. That small act broke something inside the billionaire's heart. Victoria had spent millions funding charitable organizations, yet this little girl, who owned almost nothing, had just demonstrated generosity that no financial report could ever measure. As darkness settled over the city, Daniel pointed toward a nearby community shelter and explained where she could find a safe place to sleep. Before leaving, he wished her better days ahead and walked away holding Lily's hand. Victoria remained sitting on the sidewalk long after they disappeared. For the first time in years, she cried without trying to hide it. The following morning, Victoria returned to her normal life. Luxury cars once again surrounded her. Executives welcomed her back with meetings, contracts, and business plans. But she could no longer think about profits. She could only think about one father who had sacrificed his family's dinner for a complete stranger. She instructed her private team to quietly locate Daniel Harper. They discovered that he worked 2 jobs, struggled with overdue rent, and had nearly exhausted his savings paying medical bills after his wife's illness. Despite everything, his neighbors described him as the first person willing to help anyone in need. A week later, Daniel received an invitation to attend what he believed was a community appreciation event hosted by Victoria's Foundation. He arrived wearing his only suit. Lily wore a simple blue dress that had once belonged to her cousin. Neither of them expected anything beyond a free lunch. When Victoria stepped onto the stage, Daniel immediately recognized the woman from outside the cafe. Confusion filled his face. The audience watched silently as Victoria shared the story of the stranger who had been invisible to nearly everyone except one father and his little girl. She explained why she had chosen to live anonymously for a day and how one simple act of sacrifice had restored her faith in humanity. Daniel sat frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. Victoria walked directly toward him. She thanked him publicly, not for feeding a billionaire, but for feeding someone he believed had absolutely nothing. She explained that true character is revealed not by what people give when they have abundance, but by what they choose to give when they themselves are struggling. Then came the surprise no one expected. Victoria announced that Daniel would become the director of a new nationwide community outreach initiative created to identify struggling families before they reached homelessness. She knew he understood compassion better than any executive ever could. She also revealed that every debt he owed had been completely paid. His mortgage was covered. Lily's education would be fully funded through college. And a trust fund had been established to secure their future. The room erupted into applause, but Daniel could barely speak. Lily ran forward and hugged Victoria with tears streaming down her face. Months later, Daniel's new program helped thousands of struggling parents receive food, housing assistance, childcare support, and employment opportunities before their lives spiraled into crisis. Victoria often visited the program quietly, never seeking publicity. Sometimes she simply sat with families, listening to their stories. She had learned that changing lives didn't always begin with billion-dollar investments. Sometimes it began with half a sandwich shared by someone who could barely afford it. The greatest wealth in this world has never been measured by the money sitting in a bank account. It has always been measured by the kindness hidden inside a human heart. The richest woman in the country spent one day pretending to have nothing, only to discover that the poorest people often possess the greatest treasures of all: compassion, sacrifice, and unconditional humanity. Somewhere, in a little girl's memory, the lesson remained forever: when you choose kindness over comfort, you may never know whose life you are saving, or how profoundly that kindness will return to change your own. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to Humanity Tales. Every interaction helps these stories of hope, kindness, and humanity reach more people who may need them today.